Let's kick it.
Hey, this is Betsy Pake, author, speaker, and life lover, and I'm kicking it with Doree.
Welcome to the Kicking It with Doree show. This is Doree Allen Nieves, and today my guest is entrepreneur, award-winning business achiever, competitive weightlifter, and life strategist, Betsy Pake. Betsy hosts the popular podcast, The Art of Living Big. She's the author of the best-selling book, Become a Nutrition Ninja, and just released Start Small, Live Big. Betsy's mission is to help inspire others to thrive through change by starting small. She lives outside Atlanta, Georgia with her husband Craig and daughter Olive. Please welcome to the show, Mrs. Betsy Pake. Welcome to the show, Betsy.
Yay, confetti toss. Hi.
I know. I'm not going to add, I have the little
The crowd goes wild.
Yes, absolutely. And they should. Betsy said that after helping her daughter with her anxiety issues, she learned some systems that also now work with her clients to accomplish new goals, get motivated, and begin to live happier, more joyful lives. She says the go big or go home idea just doesn't work, and it leads us to feeling less than and unhappy. There is a better way, and she says it's her mission to share the start small, live big philosophy with the world. So I'm excited to have you here to share it with our world here, our listeners on Kicking It with Doree. So thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Awesome. First, let's talk about that idea of starting small to live big, because a lot of people have big dreams, big aspirations and goals. And when they look at other people who have achieved things, whether it's a celebrity on TV or their favorite athlete, or just even people that are sort of somewhat acquaintances but distant in their lives that they see around town, they kind of sometimes think that that is unattainable for them. Like, oh, that worked for him, that worked for her, but it won't work for me, or it'll take too long, or it's too hard, or I don't know if I can do it. And so what is this concept that you are talking about here with the start small to live big?
Yeah, I think that in this culture where there's so much like social media and comparison, and, every other thing we see is like some quote about the hustle and, go big or go home. And I just feel like that sets us up to feel like we're never doing enough. We can never be enough. We can never possibly become what other people are doing, because all we see is the positive stuff they're doing, right? Because that's what we put out on social media.
Yeah.
And I think it creates this culture of just feeling like we can never get anywhere. And for most people, when you feel like that, you just throw your hands up and go, oh, well, I guess this is what my life is supposed to be. And I'm just here to say, like, that is just not true. You don't have to compare yourself to anybody else. You don't have to believe what everybody else is showing you is the only thing that's going on in their life. And really, there is a much better way to live a life that you truly love and find joyful than just like hustling and being in this grind. And so that is my mission. And really how I came to find this and really to formulate it and to make it into something that I could share with people was, as we all have lots of journeys in our lives and lots of things that happened. But for me, I worked in corporate America for over 20 years. I had an amazing career. I had success on every level that you would typically think to be able to judge success. But what I wasn't showing was that my daughter, who was probably about like 9 or 10 at the time, was really struggling. And with my job, I traveled all the time. And so I decided that I was going to leave that job and come home and become an entrepreneur, which is something that I always wanted to do. So I thought I can do that and I can be home and be with my child. And, that journey, like all journeys, brings us to lots of different things. But how it turned out was that I picked an entrepreneurial endeavor that everybody said I should do. Do you know that thing like where everybody says, you should do that. You should be really good at that. And so you think like, well, that's what I'm supposed to do. But I never got like quiet with myself, right? I never got like quiet and thought, what do I really want to do? And what I decided to do was open a CrossFit gym because I loved to work out and I've worked out my whole life and run marathons and done all kinds of things. But the reality was I didn't want to run a CrossFit gym. So now I've left a really successful job so that I can be home more with my kid. But the reality is I'm not home. I'm trying to run a business that really doesn't fill me up or make me joyful. And so I got to this huge fork in the road about 2.5 years ago, where all of a sudden I thought, like, I have jumped ship to chase a dream that wasn't mine. And I had to stop, create a totally new vision, and figure out where I wanted to go. Now, on the other track, like we all have lots of things happening. My daughter, again, needed me at home, but she started to have tons of anxiety. So now she's going into middle school, which, middle school is an anxiety ridden
Oh, yes.
experience anyway, right? So when the school called and they said, like, she's having an anxiety attack, I thought, well, aren't they all? But when they called a couple times, and pretty soon she realized that when the school called, it was embarrassing. And so if she thought she was having an anxiety attack at school, she would run into the bathroom and hide and text me. So that whole experience was happening, and it was so difficult and frustrating for her. And so in working through that, I found that if I started with really, really tiny steps with her, I could make an impact. And so here's what I mean by that. When you're having an anxiety attack, right, it's your amygdala, it's your freeze, fight, or flight response. And with her, that would trigger, like, if there was a substitute teacher, or like even if a kid sat in a different seat. So she would have like this anxiety, like her brain would go, oh, no, this is something new and different. Now, on the other track in my career, I'm starting to work with people as a nutrition coach and as a life coach. And I'm realizing that they are having the same sort of reaction. Now, they weren't having like a hyperventilating, a panic attack, but they had a resistance that they couldn't really explain. And so I started to practice the same things with them that I found was working with my daughter. So I'm going to give you an example. So I had a client named Nancy who was really, really successful. She had an amazing corporate job and really loved her job and loved her work and her family, but she wanted to incorporate more health into her life, right? So just wanted to establish better patterns with health and fitness. And so like a lot of us, like we have that idea, we would talk and we would say, like, this week, why don't you try to walk, 3 times a week? And at the end of the week, I would check in with her and she would say, like, I just didn't do it. And I would ask her, why didn't you do it? Because it was pretty simple. And just like all of us, when we have an idea of something we want to do, there was a resistance because it was something new. So it was her amygdala basically stopping her, right? So it's that freeze, fight, or flight. Like, this is new, this is different. I don't know if I'm going to die, right? And so I said to her, this week, just put on your workout clothes. And so I know, like, she thought I was crazy, but she did it. She just 3 days a week just put her workout clothes on. And at the end of the week, I called her and I asked if she did it. And she was like, yeah, of course I did it. Like, it was too small not to do it. And I realized at that moment, this was going to work with my clients too. And so the following week I said, okay, well, put your workout clothes on, but I also want you to just march in place in front of the TV when you watch the news. Like, every time a commercial comes on, just march in place. And at the end of the week, when I called her to follow up, I said, did you do it? And she said, I didn't. I did it twice. The third time I just went for a walk. And I thought, action is what creates motivation. If you can do something that's so, so small, you can start to move towards that big life that you have in your head. So it's not go big or go home. It's not everything's perfect all the time. It's really, really small incremental steps so that you can move past that biological part of your brain that doesn't want you to change. And so it just became a process that I became obsessed with, and it has led me here where I share it with others, and I share it in my book, Start Small, Live Big.
Absolutely. There's so many times when we have resistance to change, period. That comes with the goals, like you said. It comes with starting something new, being afraid of the unknown. And I think of the resistance as well when it comes to creative endeavors, because sometimes you know what to do and it's not about the motivation. It's just like you're just procrastinating. You're just like, I'll get to that later. I'll get to that later. It's like a task that's not so fun or so sexy that you really want to jump for it. Yeah. So there's all kinds of resistance that we are always faced with. And I like that starting small thing, because you have to, as they say, eat an elephant one bite at a time. I really like that story about her just doing something during commercials, and then she just said, okay, I'm going to go ahead and take a walk.
Yeah, because I think it gets you going, where then you're like, well, I'm already doing this. It's not as scary. It doesn't seem as far-fetched to do.
And I also, a really great point you made as well, is that action is what creates the motivation. So many people think that hearing something will motivate them. Oh, I heard this great speaker. I heard this sermon, or I watched this video on YouTube, or I went to this seminar, and I went to this conference, and I'm just so motivated. And then you get back to the house and you just go on ahead and do the default, because it's not that the person is motivating you to make change. They might have inspired you. They might have made you feel good. They might have like lit your fire a bit. But the action, when you start to do something, even something small, that is what creates the momentum. And that's a really excellent point that I'm sure people heard, but I just want to emphasize, because so many people think that when they get motivated, that's when they'll do something. No, you do something, and then that creates that momentum to keep you motivated.
Yeah, yep, that's right. And sometimes, you'll hear a speaker or you'll hear something. What I always try to do is write down when I'm listening to somebody, like one small thing I could do as soon as I leave, because then I've used that as a catalyst to start my action. So just find one little thing. Sometimes we think I got to write a list of 10 things, come up with like just one, because one thing will lead you to the next thing, will lead you to the next thing.
Absolutely. Yes. And I also want to say, don't take too much time with the information and learning. Go ahead and make that little short list of one or two things that you'll do, because you can get caught up so easily with an idea or being motivated by something that you hear or something that you read or see, that you just start consuming content. And before you know it, you haven't done a damn thing.
Yeah, it's so true. I always tell people, just get started, because it's not going to turn out the way you think. So just get going doing something. I was updating my website the other day, and I stumbled upon my very first homepage that was like in the trash bin. And it was so bad. And I loved it. I was like, this is like the worst. And it was amazing, because I just put it out there anyway. And so it led to one thing, led to another. And now it's a much prettier looking homepage, but it won't look like it does now in 2 years. It'll be even better. So just do something. Yeah.
And you will progress. Absolutely. Just keep at it. You will progress. You also said something during this story where you were talking about the chase. And so you have a framework that's called the chase. Tell us about what chase stands for.
Yeah. So one of the problems that I had was I would have clients that would come to me and I could give them their small steps, right? We could work through the process, but I needed something that somebody could just take and run with on their own. I'd love to be able to talk with everybody in the world, but but I can't. And so I developed this framework, and it's called CHASE, and it stands for Create, Help, Attain, Start, and Examine. And you can actually download it for free on my website. But it is just a framework. It's a one sheet that will actually walk you through, like identifying where you really are, identifying really your vision for where you want to be, and then how to create all those small steps, like how to get them really tiny so that you can move forward. And I use these worksheets in my life like all the time. That's how I even came up with it, because I was trying to develop something for myself. And I used it before to help overcome, like trying to come up with a meal plan. Everybody in my house wants something different, So at the top of the worksheet, I described that problem. Like, everyone wants something different. I feel like a short order cook. Like, I don't know how to grocery shop, vision of dinner in my house would be. And then I just came up with all the little small steps that could actually help me do that. So it's a great little form. It's called the CHASE framework, and you can download it for free on my website. And it's got instructions there too, so it'll help you kind of walk through that.
Excellent. And Betsy's website, which she will repeat later, is betsypake.com. It's her name, Betsy Pake, BetsyPake, like cake, but with a P.
Yes.
And I'll also link to it in the show notes as well for this episode. What do you think is that one thing that prevents people from moving toward their goals? Is it what I said earlier about it seems like a monstrous task, or is it something else at the root?
You know what I think it is? Totally, like, no matter how many people I talk to, is they are not clear on what they want. They're not clear on what the outcome really should be. And that's that Chase worksheet helps you clarify, what is the outcome I really want? Like, sometimes people will say, I'll talk to a client and I'll say to them, like, well, what would you like to see different in your life? And they will start telling me, well, I'd like my boss to appreciate me. I'd like my husband to know how hard I work at home and how hard I work at work, and my kids to be more self-sufficient. Like, they tell me all the stuff they hate, right? All the stuff that they don't really like, but they don't have a vision of what they really want. So, like, instead of, I wish my husband appreciated how hard I work at work and how hard I work at home, it would be, I wish my husband and I connected on a deeper level. And I wish that we both had a better understanding of what we do during the day and how that impacts our mood at night. Do you see the difference? So it's like a shift in how, what you really want instead of what you don't want. And
Mm-hmm.
I think so many times people just don't really have a clear vision, or they say, like, I'd like to build a great business. Okay, well, what's a great business? Because a great business to me is probably something totally different than a great business to you.
Yeah.
So really getting clear on that vision. And, you know, when I owned that CrossFit gym, and that was great. It was a great experience. I'm not sad that I did that, but it wasn't really what I wanted deep down. And I was working all the time. And it was one morning I got up, and it was a Saturday morning, and everyone in my house was asleep. And I remember I was so grateful to have time alone. And I thought, that is really bad. Like, I'm so grateful that everyone's just like, nobody's bugging me. And so I threw myself on the couch, and I remember we have like these skylights in my living room. I remember I looked up and I could see the sky, and I said, is this it? And I heard a voice say, Betsy, if you could do anything today, what would you do? And honestly, that was the first time in several years I felt inspired and happy and excited. And I grabbed my iPad and I started to write out, like, everything about my life, what my life would be like if it was perfect. And I went crazy. I mean, George Clooney was in my bed, and that was the only thing I decided probably wasn't realistic. So, but like, I knew what my furniture looked like. I knew where I lived, like what it smelled like outside. It smelled like the ocean. And I still live in Beaufort, Georgia. So the ocean isn't here, but I know it's coming. You know, what kind of food I had in the pantry, the kinds of friends I had. I knew what my friends' goals were. I knew where I went on vacation, how many times I went on vacation, who we went with, what kinds of restaurants my husband and I went to. Like, I knew everything. I knew what would really fill me up. And it was a weird moment because it was the first time I really let myself go where I really wanted to go. You know, when you're growing up, I remember my family would always be like, Betsy won't shut up. Betsy has to be the center of attention, right? Like, you know, we've all had our family say stuff about us. But really, that was my superpower, is that I could motivate and inspire people, and I'm a really good listener. But I didn't let myself do any of that because I heard it as a bad thing. That morning when I was writing out my vision, it wasn't bad anymore. I let whatever come out. And that, I think, is the huge thing people are missing, is they never allow themselves the chance to listen to, like, their inner knower about what their vision for their life really could be.
That was powerful. And I think that that is important, that we listen to ourselves, and if our heart is not in it and those things, that there's all different kinds of reasons why we do things for other people and stuff like that. And it's not necessarily bad. Like you said, I'm sure you learned a lot from running that business. And I think also sometimes when we make those choices to do things that are not quite aligned with us, that creates additional stress and overwhelm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and I think if I hadn't had that experience, I probably never would have gotten to the point where I was quiet enough to find out what I really wanted. I probably would have just been content enough. Like, I think there's that contrast in our life. Like, we don't always want to be aligned and always in the flow, because when we're out of alignment, that's when we go, oh, wait a minute, this is something I want to change. There's something new I could bring into my life. So really, it was the greatest thing ever, because if I hadn't ever done that, who knows? Maybe I never would have gotten to the point where I would have slowed down and said, this isn't right.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I talk to people all the time. They're like, I don't even know what I want to do. Like, it would be great to have a big goal to break down into a small step, but I don't even know what my goal would be. And like, I always say to people, like, find things that bring you joy. It doesn't have to be your career. It doesn't have to be, think about when you were a kid, what makes you happy. Go do something creative. We are creative beings. And don't worry about finding the thing. The thing will come to you. So, when I first started this journey, I didn't know my thing would be the way it is now. I didn't know my website would look the way it does right now. I just got moving. And so just find things that bring you joy in your life, because I think that's the meaning of life. And so if you can do that, bring more joy into your life, your purpose will start to unfold. Anything that you're trying to overcome is really your gift. I always say people are candles, but we don't know what we're supposed to light up until we get put in the dark.
Yeah.
And so like that whole experience with my daughter, I mean, now she goes to a 4,000 kid high school. Like, it's amazing. And she is in clubs and groups and has friends. But like, if we hadn't gone through that awful thing, like, she wouldn't have learned like so many skills that she did. And I wouldn't have learned how to help her. And now I can take that, transform it into something that can help other people. So going through the darkness is really such a blessing.
So, Betsy, when we're talking about creating more joy, finding out what we want to do, and starting small, I believe that one of the most important things you can do is create good habits, because I think that the thing, like I said before, we sometimes get motivated and inspired. We get all revved up, right? Like, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. And then we get back home and we fall into those regular habits that we have, that regular default routine, because that's what we know. That's what we're used to. It's autopilot. We don't have to think about it. So talk to us about the importance of creating good habits and how we can kind of shift that as we're moving toward, finding joy and, living with purpose and living big.
Yeah, once you create your vision, right? So you have a vision and now you're motivated and you're getting going. That lasts for a little while, right? So we know that from New Year's resolution time. People will be pumped up and ready and they'll work out for a couple weeks and then it fizzles off. And it always like pains my soul because people will say like, I couldn't keep up with it. I'm not the kind of person that can keep a resolution. I'm just not meant. I'm always going to be overweight. That whole thing, like I am. So first of all, quit the I am because that you don't identify with that. But also really what it is, it's not about willpower. It's just about your habits, right? So like you said, we have this like default, what we do. And when I talk with people, sometimes they'll say to me, but Betsy, I don't really have any habits. I'm like, oh, you have habits and they are bad. You have a pattern of what you do. It's just not serving you. One thing I hear people say a lot is, drinking more water. And I went through that just recently. I sat in meditation one day and I asked my body, what would you like? And I heard like, you need to eat more vegetables and you need to drink more water. And so instead of just relying on my memory to do that, or just like, okay, now at this moment, I'm motivated to drink some water, I decided to go to my habits and my structure I already had, and then add in the habit of drinking water. So for me, in the morning, I get up, I do the same exact thing, right? My alarm goes off, I shut it off, I roll over and I pet my dog. And then I go to the bathroom, I brush my teeth, and then I go downstairs to make coffee. Well, that's a total habit. If I brushed my teeth first and then I went to the bathroom, try that. If you have a pattern, switch it up. It feels really weird. It doesn't go together, right? So I wanted to use that structure because it's such a pattern. I've probably been doing that for 40 years. What's my pattern? And what I did at night, I got a bottle of water and one of those pretty swell bottles, and I filled it up with my lemon water and I put it right next to my toothbrush. So now I got up, I pet my dog, I went to the bathroom, I brushed my teeth, I saw the bottle, I grabbed it, and I start drinking water as I'm walking downstairs. So now it's not about willpower. It's not about remembering. It's just about adding in a system. So now I have a new system. And now once I did that for probably 6 weeks or so, if I didn't have the bottle of water there, I was like, oh, where's my water? Because then I missed it. It became part of my system. So create habits, use systems you already have, and just find the thing you can add it to. Now, maybe that's like putting a Post-it note on your light switch that reminds you of the thing. whatever the thing is. So there are ways to kind of create those systems. And then on the flip side, you can break systems that aren't serving you. So I had a client once that always ate like a bowl of cereal at like 9:00 at night. So she was like, I would do all day and feel really good about the fuel I was giving myself. But at 9:00 at night, like I didn't even have to look at the clock, and I knew it was like my cereal. So it was sort of like just not making her feel good. And, she was getting sort of a sugar rush before she went to bed. And so to break a habit, she identified what it was. She didn't want to eat the cereal at 9 p.m. So, when you have that energy, like where you go like, ooh, I got to have my cereal, or I want to have that chocolate, or whatever it is. It's a chemical reaction in your mind, right? Or in your body. So it comes up, you kind of feel that energy wave. And so what I told her was, when you feel that, just wait. So even if you just wait 2 seconds and then go and eat the cereal, you're breaking the habit because you're putting distance in there. So if you can wait 5 seconds the next day and 10 seconds the next day, you're starting to break that habit. And if you can wait 2 minutes, that gives a chance for like a clearing of that chemical reaction to happen. And so then you have even more control. So if you can wait 2 seconds, that is great. You're starting to break the habit, even if you still go eat the cereal. So find ways you can add in new habits to the patterns you already have, and just add space to the habits you want to get rid of. And over time, small steps, right? Over time, it'll start to become the life that you want. So just a way to take control of that.
Yeah, I like that. That's a new one for me. I haven't heard of that before. Just wait a few seconds or wait a minute. And yeah, that's good. I was thinking about how when we change and we're starting small, that we just do one change at a time. Like you might do one task, small task at a time, but you're also just changing one thing at a time. Sometimes people think that they have to change like everything. Like you were talking about in that example, I'm going to drink more water. I'm going to have more vegetables. You might not want to do 5 things in your diet at the same time. You might only be able to handle like this week, I'm doing the water thing, and I'm going to go from having 1 cup of water a day to having 3 cups of water a day. I'm going to have 1 cup of water with each meal. Then you go, okay, well, in a couple of days or in a week, I'm going to have 5 cups of water. And then maybe week 2 or week 3, that's when you start to add in more vegetables. You don't want to overwhelm yourself by trying to change too many things at the same time, because that can introduce a lot of frustration. You have to take the time, like Betsy said, to build that habit, because you don't just start habits, 20 of them at a time. You start the habits slowly, and you change small and you change often.
Yeah, I love that. Yep, for sure. And stacking of your habits is such a good way. So get one thing down and then add the next thing. Yeah.
Betsy, tell us about the Live Big Lab.
I found I was helping people, and they would come to me, and I'd get one-on-one, coaching clients, and I would work with them. But I wanted a way really to create like a more sustainable impact. So there's so many good little nuggets, like the thing I just shared about creating your habits and breaking habits that I knew could really help people. So right now I am creating something called the Live Big Lab, and it's just full of experiments you can try with yourself. So that opens up several times a year where you can get in there, try all the experiments. Any of the courses that I offer, online courses, are in there too. So it's just a great way for a really low monthly cost to be able to get in and learn a whole bunch and have it be more sustainable. So you're learning new stuff every single month. So it's been really fun as we've been creating everything to just kind of, figure out what will help people and how we can move them along a process instead of just everything out all at once, learning it all out. Because I have so much to share that I know can really make an impact. So that's the lab. So it's really fun.
Yeah, that's the best way to learn, is to build upon each level. You don't want to hit them with too much at once, because then you just get frustrated and cut it off, like we said. Betsy, tell everyone how they can reach you online, because we have to wrap up and we want to make sure that they can get into the Live Big Lab and follow you on social media.
Yeah, so I'm everywhere on social media at Betsy Pake. So one word. So on Twitter and Instagram and all that at Betsy Pake. My website's betsypake.com. And if you want to head right into that Chase worksheet. It's just betsypake.com/chase.
Excellent. I'm going to have all these links in the show notes so that you can just go right to it if you're listening in your car or you're walking and you want to get back to it. My website is DareeAllen.com, DareAllen, and just go to the Betsy Pake episode. Everything is linked up in that episode. Betsy, I want to thank you so much for joining me and for sharing all these insights, sharing with us about the chase and the joy and everything that you have given us today. It's been not only motivating, but also action-oriented, because we know that we need to have action first in order to create that motivation.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It was fun to hang with you.
Yes, and thank you guys for listening and for kicking it with me as well. Until next time. If you like this show, I'd love to have your support. Visit patreon.com/kicking it with Daree, without the G, to learn more.